Just as neoliberalism amplified and accelerated the mechanisms of human-made disasters and complex systems, this narrative lays bare the heightened potential for safety misfortunes when governed by market-driven principles. There's a lot to think about. Hello, I am Sam Reno, and this video is about concepts of human and organizational performance. Tonight, I am starting to read the book Random Noise. Random Noise, if I can get it in the light there, by Georgina Poole and Sidney Dekker. I'm much more familiar with Sidney Dekker's work, one of the great thinkers on concepts of human performance and safety and of our time. And so started reading this book, Random Noise, Measuring Your Company's Safety Performance. And just whenever I first got into the first page, I had an intriguing sentence, deep concepts already from the first page. Safety management has been affected by the dynamics of asset underinvestment, privatization, self-regulation, workplace flexibilization, and market-driven policies. Already talking about a lot of stuff. Then, this book, the second installment of a thought-provoking trilogy. So on the consequences of neoliberalism, mirrors the political economy's promotion of the private sector's role in the economy. Just as neoliberalism amplified and accelerated the mechanisms of human-made disasters and complex systems. All right, so just to be clear, the premise that starts this is that free markets, deregulation, privatization, reduced government intervention amplified human-made disasters and complex systems. Well, right there, that's just worth thinking about. I mean, right now, here it is. It's August 2024. One of the things that's on the news daily is Boeing and the plight of Boeing. And, I think one of the stories about Boeing has been, there had been reduced regulatory oversight, especially of their manufacturing processes. And, for example, the regulators, as I understand it, I should read more about this. As I understand it, became employees of Boeing. Boeing was required to hire these regulators, and in doing so, you have this increased chance of regulatory capture, and so a perception, I think, has been that one of the functions that has led Boeing to where it is at struggles with perceptions of quality of their aircraft and spacecraft is that regulatory oversight had weakened. So there's an example of that, I guess. If you know more about, if you have more of an opinion about, or maybe less of an opinion, if you have more direct knowledge on the trajectory of regulation at Boeing, I'd appreciate if you'd leave that in the comments. It's something I want to read more about. I've read about it, and but I'm also afraid to expound on it because I don't remember the facts all that well. So if you do remember the facts about what the trajectory has been at Boeing, if you have other thoughts on how Boeing might connect to this concept of what Poole and Dekker are saying are human-made disasters and complex systems, I'm interested in what your thoughts are. So, all right, so I'm going to keep reading. I'll be back in a little bit and dive into some more concepts, but I can already tell I'm going to stop. It's going to take me a long time to read this book because I'm going to stop and think about it and talk about it multiple times per page. All right, so I've been reading since my little edit there. I read the introduction, I guess is the introduction, and then the preface. And I want to just kind of share what I've read and where the book seems to be going and some of my thoughts so far. So, when I was reading the introduction, it kind of, I had those, what I said, some deep concepts about, neoliberalism and all that stuff. And then it kind of goes on to talk about the authors, Georgina Poole, health and safety professional in Brisbane, Australia. And a podcast, Leading Safely. I guess I admit I've not listened to that podcast. Maybe I need to put that in my or in my list. And then Sidney Dekker, as I mentioned, well known, and he is also a professor in Brisbane, Australia, and author of several books. I guess I did not know that he was first officer on Boeing 737s. I did not know that. Okay, so one of the things that it talked about is that this is what it says is the second in 3 books. I had not read the first book, Compliance Capitalism: How Free Markets Have Led to Unfree, Overregulated Workers. So that's an interesting concept to me. I like to read about all things. Also, just my default mindset when I hear that is, that's neat and also not actionable for me in a capitalistic system where I'm like a mid-senior leader of safety and training. And so, then the second book, that's just my default when I hear that. I want to read it, but also I think, what am I going to do with that information? And now, so we're in the second book, Random Noise, Measuring Your Company's Safety Performance, which is very fascinating to me. And one of the things I want to do, I think, after I've read this book or along the way, is go back to a book by Dan Peterson. He's deceased, but he was a writer. He was an author for the American Society of Safety Engineers. Since then, the name has changed to the American Society of Safety Professionals. But I've got 2 of his books on my bookshelf, and one of those books is Measuring Safety Performance. And so I'll be interested, and that book's like 20 years old. And so I'll be interested how the concepts of that book, which I think was fairly foundational, from back when I was in college type of thing, how do the concepts of that book written 20 years ago mesh or whatever with this book by Poole and Dekker today, which is really about the same concept. How do you measure your company's safety performance? So the preface, it kind of does what a lot of prefaces do. It sets out what is this book going to cover. And, one of the things already it talks about, this is interesting, a little bit of historical background, that I think it's good for a safety professional or, any sort of management leader to know, but it's just background information. Talking about lost time injuries, it says lost time injuries were never meant to do what many organizations are making them to do today. They are a measure of labor efficiency. In pre-industrial labor relations, people generally purchased a worker's actual labor. Capital purchased a worker's labor time or potential labor instead of products or actual work. And so lost time injuries and medical treatment injuries directly reflected lost productive capacity in such an industrial arrangement. As organizations became more aware of the financial costs with workplace injuries, they began to see value in tracking and reducing lost time injuries. Today, this is quotes, today lost time injuries, medical treatment injuries are as essentially cost and productivity figures are used as stand-ins for a lot of other things. Workplace safety, injury frequency, injury severity, workplace culture, national safety culture, workplace health and safety cost, and even individual worker performance or suitability for the job. I agree. That's all of those things are what are like bundled in to, the reports that I've got to generate about the number of lost time incidents, the OSHA incidents, or number of OSHA recordables, all of those things. Like if you've got one guy who's had 2 lost time injuries, that says something about individual worker suitability for the job. We can't help but read that into those metrics. So, what's going to happen as this, these first few chapters unfold, it's going to be preaching to the choir. And I think as I talk to human performance, safety professionals, other leaders across the industry, I think the first few chapters of this book, are selling me something that I think I've already bought into. And I think a lot of those leaders, safety professionals, human performance professionals, were already bought into, right? And I think my view of the first few chapters, I'll go through the preview of the first few chapters, but I think it's, to me, where's the value? It's looking for like quips or quotes that I'll be able to use to sell CEOs, and ultimately maybe those who the CEOs are accountable to, which is oftentimes, the public and shareholders, right? I already know I'm going to be looking like, where are the quotes and the concepts that I can go, hey, this helps justify a change in the way we measure safety. Because we're looking to, I'm going to read it again, we're looking towards lost time and medical treatments as a stand-in for a lot of other things: workplace safety, injury frequency, injury severity, workplace culture, national safety culture, individual worker performance and suitability for the job. So that's trying to read a lot of things into those two metrics. And I mean, the premise of this book, well, I'll keep going on it. So it goes on to say the metric can encourage underreporting of injuries to maintain favorable statistics. Duh. And so goes on what chapter 1's going to do. Talk about aspirations of the Enlightenment and introduction of insecurity to the English lexicon. Okay. And then in chapter 2, shows that lost time incident rate, or lost time injuries, that emperor has no clothes. Okay, I'm already sold. Chapter 3 explains that a reduction in, I've read this a couple times. I have to think about what it means a bit. A reduction in the number of injuries is caused by the intervention. Okay, let me start from the top. Chapter 3 explains that the likelihood that a reduction in the number of injuries is caused by the intervention rather than by chance is statistically significant. Okay, so I don't really, I guess I might have to read that chapter, read the rest of this again, and obviously I can get into more detail in chapter 3, but I don't know what's being said right now. Chapter 3 explains that the likelihood that a reduction in the number of injuries is caused by the, I don't know where my inflection is at. Chapter 3 explains that the likelihood that a reduction in the number of injuries is caused by the intervention rather than by chance is statistically significant. I don't really know what it's saying. Okay, it is statistically significant that the number of injuries is caused by the intervention. Oh no, that a reduction in the number of injuries is caused by the intervention rather than chance. I don't know if it's saying that. I mean, what I read from this, what I expected to read into that sentence as I was reading it is that, like, hey, you know what? Was it just random chance that you reduced your injuries compared to whatever your safety recovery plans or improvement plans put into place? And I believe that. I see that. I've been concerned about that for a long time. Especially in large organizations, which are doing so much, right? That when you see blips, you're going to probably hear it's Labor Day, obviously the evening of Labor Day in August 2024. I'm sitting on my front porch, beautiful night, late summer night, and I think you hear the sounds of somebody's had a bad night in Des Moines. Sound of sirens. I don't know if you hear that, but so this quote, I mean, what I expected that quote meant as it started to unfold was that I've been worried for a long time that when you have batches of incidents, like a 1 week trend where have something happen and then something happen and then another something happens all in a short amount of time, the senior leaders, it creates a lot of stress for them. They feel very compelled to take direct action to reduce what they see as a trend, and then they do some sort of, the edict, like maybe, a new type of job safety analysis is rolled out today, and you must do it every time you do a task, or you must call your supervisor every time you are preparing to reverse your vehicle because we've had 3 backing accidents in a week. And so it's a trend. And then if that that action, like I said, if you have to call your supervisor every time before you reverse your vehicle. Well, if you go for 2 or 3 weeks without any more backing accidents, and go, aha, ta-da, that worked. That was an intervention that worked. When maybe it was just regression of the mean. Maybe it was just statistics. That's what I was expecting what that sentence meant. I don't know what that sentence meant. Maybe when I get into chapter 3, maybe we'll explain it. But then it goes on to say, if you want to be confident that a reduction in injuries is due to what you did rather than mere random variations, the numbers need to meet stringent requirements. Spoiler alert, your organization's data will fail to meet those requirements. I agree. All right. And then I'm going to read this as a quote. In most cases, in the most likely case, the relationship between injuries and accidents is random. In some cases, researchers even suspect that the absence of injuries is an omen that suggests a serious accident may be around the corner. So I've read that. I've read that sort of analysis that the absence of those sorts of incidents is, a minor incident is an indication that a major incident is on the way. And a friend of mine who I've known for a long time in the industry, he has said, and I don't know if he got this from somewhere else, but, one of the things about safety statistics is that we can mistake that personal safety is not the same as system safety. And if your number of knife cuts has gone way down, if your number of motor vehicle incidents has gone way down, that is not the same as system safety. And the connection that he made to that always was Deepwater Horizon. So the book, chapter 5, now this is really relevant to me. Chapter 5, why contractors appear at greater risk of life-changing events than your employees. That's relevant to me. It's relevant to me right now, considering some recent events. So even though there's all these chapters that are interesting, everything leading up to this is trying to sell me on something that I already believe. And I think that a lot of people in the industry already believe, right? Chapter 5, I'm going to jump to that first because that's relevant. I also have a weekly safety call that I host, a conference call that I host with all of my management team. And there's about 60 or 70 people that attend that call every week. And every week I'm always looking for content. And I think that this chapter about contractors is a relevant topic for the discussion for that safety call this week. So I'm going to jump to that. And then it goes on to, I'm going to just touch on a few more of the chapters that it covers, and then I'm going to pause for the moment and then catch up with you later on, I think whenever I read chapter 5. Chapter 7 gets into the issues relating the accuracy and reporting of incidents, how elements such as supervisor enforcement and safety climate play a part in how comfortable employees are in sharing their story when an accident has occurred. What's intriguing to me, when I get to chapter 7, it talks about how supervisor enforcement plays a part. So, I don't know if that's supervisors enforcing that people tell the stories of the minor incidents that have occurred. I know when I was a supervisor, I was a construction crew supervisor, and guys would come into my office, and they'd be like, I felt a little pop, and I just want you to know, FYI. So they put the problem on me as a frontline supervisor, where I knew I am obligated to ensure all accidents and injuries are reported. And a guy coming in saying, I felt a little pop, is that an injury? I guess it is. But on the other hand, people who work all day for a living, I think they think that you're going to have pops. I mean, heck, whenever I carry my laundry hamper up and down the stairs, my shoulder makes a creaking noise, right? So that was always a challenge, right? Now, so I'll be interested in what we're talking about in chapter 7. Supervisor enforcement plays a part in how comfortable an employee is sharing their story. Now, I always wanted everybody to tell me everything when I was a construction crew supervisor. Anytime, day or night, you can call me and tell me what's going on. That created moral dilemmas for me sometimes. And going, well, okay, this person is telling me something as you would person to person. I'd say almost sort of in confidence. I had to divine, and that wasn't just related to whether your elbow popped, but also some stuff with interpersonal conflict among the work team, right? And so that, I had to make a lot of decisions about okay, does this employee want me to take action? Is this employee looking to me almost to just like have kind of a counseling effect? So I'll be interested in chapter 7 talking about that. Chapter 8 talks about like zero harm, concepts such as, what I'd say like zero vision, target zero. And, it's going to talk about how practical achievability of this concept remains elusive. Agreed. And then chapter 9 talks about what we should be measuring instead. And, the basis of, safety, these concepts referred to, safety differently, safety 2, resilience engineering, it's going to get into how we measure the capacities of those sort of schools of thought, which, I believe in, and I do believe that a lot more needs to be developed on how you are effective in demonstrating that those capacity, increasing the safety capacity of the organization. How are you demonstrating that they're making a difference, right? It's sort of the same challenge, but if zero vision, we want to have a zero, target zero. If what you're trying to do is reduce, measure a reductivist, you're measuring how you reduce. Well, if you're measuring how you build up, well, I think you can have the same problem. It's how am I effectively measuring what I build up, right? I think two of the classic things that you're measuring are the number of supervisor job observations, right? Number of times the supervisor goes out and does a safety engagement with the workers. And then another classic measurement of building capacity, I think, is good catch reporting. Well, I still, I hope that this chapter 10, maybe gets into some of the research. And one of the things that's good about Sidney Dekker, for sure, and this book's already alluded to it, is that it's referencing well-founded academic articles as opposed to just thought pieces in some generic safety magazine. So I'll be interested in if there's any data surrounding do good catch reports make a difference really in creating safety? Do supervisor engagements make a difference in creating safety? Because just if you talk about safety engagements by supervisors, so much to talk about. The individual capability of an individual supervisor, whether they're a challenger personality, whether they're an agreeable personality, whether they have knowledge really of the job of which they're watching over, right? So there's so many variables in effective safety job observations by supervisors that, I'm curious about demonstrating the value of those in building safety capacity in an organization, considering that's one of the classic measures. So then, it says, this is the second book. Oh, okay. Chapter 10 wraps up the book. Research tells us your best bet is supporting frontline capacity. No, let me say it again. I get my emphasis right. Research tells us your best bet is supporting frontline capacity building and adaptations. Well, I like the sounds of that, and I'm interested in what it means to support frontline capacity building and adaptations. So it says this is the second book in a 3-part series. The first book showed how financialization helps explain organizations' preoccupation with short-term performance. Well, look, again, this is back to where I was saying, kind of early, I am interested in that, but also I question about how actionable it is. Where it says, explains organizations' preoccupation with short-term performance. I think you could say how CEOs' preoccupation with short-term performance. From the view of a CEO, there's so much pressure to make a difference now, right? And you've got to show it on paper to the board of directors, to the public, to the shareholders, right? Well, I mean, and if you're a CEO of a company who's trying to be the CEO of a bigger company, right? You're going to have to be able to show this is how I made a difference. And a lot of people maybe in mid-management, where you've got kind of a steady growth, or like you're in that position for years, decades even. I think for a lot of CEOs, they're on the fast track, right? They need to make a difference now, right? So this is one of the challenges to how we measure safety performance, because the CEOs have a preoccupation with short-term performance. So as mid-senior leaders, I think it's, I'm hoping that this book provides some of the, inspiration, like, on how we can provide those, measure safety differently and get away from some of these older, clunkier measures like lost time injuries that aren't really doing what we want them to do. So the book, it says, just kind of wrapping this up, the second book shows how injury numbers that are used are nothing more than random noise. And that is the title of the book, Random Noise. So I'm going to wrap it up for tonight, and I'm going to start actually on chapter 5 next, because that is about contractors, and I am interested in that at the moment. All right, thank you for being here. I'm Sam Reno, professional of human and organizational performance, and I'm interested in some of your thoughts so far and what you've heard in the book. In particular, I'm interested if you, if you disagree, if you think that these lost time measures and medical treatment measures are an effective measure. And I'm also interested in, maybe your thoughts on like some of the weightier concepts that it started out in the book about how deregulation, free markets, reduced government intervention. Do you believe, and what are maybe some of the examples that come to your mind when you think about how those have magnified, errors and catastrophic events and complex systems? Okay, thanks for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Hello, I am Sam Reno, and this video is about concepts of human and organizational performance. Tonight, I am starting to read the book Random Noise. Random Noise, if I can get it in the light there, by Georgina Poole and Sidney Dekker. I'm much more familiar with Sidney Dekker's work, one of the great thinkers on concepts of human performance and safety and of our time. And so started reading this book, Random Noise, Measuring Your Company's Safety Performance. And just whenever I first got into the first page, I had an intriguing sentence, deep concepts already from the first page. And I just want to read one or two sentences, and then I'm going to jump over to, I had to look up some words. So it says, this book embarks on a profound exploration of how the political economy was reshaped in the past 2 decades. Much like privatization, deregulation, and financialization altered the economic landscape, this narrative unveils how, so there's already said a lot, right? So privatization, deregulation, financialization altered the economic landscape. And by the way, this book was published in 2024. It's 2024 now. And so over the past 2 decades, so, since, 2000, 2004. So it then goes on to say how safety management has been affected by the dynamics of asset underinvestment, privatization, self-regulation, workplace flexibilization, and market-driven policies. Already talking about a lot of stuff. Then, this book, the second installment of a thought-provoking trilogy. So on the consequences of neoliberalism, mirrors the political economy's promotion of the private sector's role in the economy. Just as neoliberal... Testing. Hello, hello, I am Sam Reno, and I'm reading a book. Hello, I am Sam Reno, and I'm going to, hello, I'm Sam Reno. We're going to have a conversation about